we think that there are something need to do about this cooking solution. And then Pak Bambang already explained about the fiscal budget and the subsidy, which is still rely much on the subsidy. And then one thing about the generation mix, that this is also still challenging. At this time, the renewable energy mix in the electricity generation is only about 9%, which is remaining about 90% is from fossil fuel generation, which is mainly coal. Coal is currently about 54%. And based on the PLN RUPTL, or business planning of PLN, in the next 2020, still coal will be still the highest portion, which can reach about 66.7%. And there is increase in renewable energy that will become about 13%, but still a long way to go to reach the target of a government to reach about 23% by 2025. And on the opportunities, we found that the new government currently is very keen to make a reform on the policy for the electricity, that in this year, starting from the previous government period, there was tariff policy reform for the electricity, that there will be increase in quarterly. And recently also the new government already reduced the subsidy for the fuel, and this is a good moving forward toward the sustainable energy development. And if we see for the national energy policy, the government will want to have 23% of renewable energy mix by 2025%, and also 100% of electrification ratio by 2020. But I think this is still need a lot of things to be done, because in the previous session, PLN already explained that the target for the electrification ratio to reach about 99.7% will be reached about 2024. And we have to also consider that we have abundant resource of gas, and also geothermal and hydropower potential, which is Indonesia is already well known as having the biggest resource of geothermal, about 26 gigawatt. And for hydropower potential, study carried out by JICA, it says that the potential hydropower in Indonesia is about 76 gigawatt. Is really huge. So if we want to go to directly what we are doing to support the development of electrification in Indonesia, mainly we have activities on the three pillars. Energy infrastructure, renewable energy and low carbon development, access to modern energy. And if we see for the investment project that we have, mostly are in the hydropower and also in renewable energy with using geothermal. We financing Ulu-Belu and Laindong, about 150 megawatt. And one, we also financing about a pumping storage of hydroelectric power, which is this will be the first pumping hydro storage in Indonesia, serving as a load picking. And other for the pipeline, we have still focusing on the three pillars, with also investment project on the hydro and also geothermal. But in the pipeline, we also will working together, providing support to government to develop some policy on the renewable energy, especially in geothermal and also hydropower, to make it a very easy, friendly business, and also make it streamline business processing. At the end, we hope that the new reform of the policy will invite more private sector to come to the electricity service. One thing, we also have one technical assistant to PLN about carbon capture and storage, which is this is a study on the readiness of the PLN to try to capture the carbon for the coal power plant, and will be injected to a depleted oil and gas field. And once last slide, one working group is not only about IBRD, we also have IFC and Amiga. IFC is one of a subsidiary that really focus on the private sector, and also MIGA, which is focusing on the investment guarantee. So both IBRD, IFC, and MIGA working together to support the development of sustainable energy in Indonesia. Thank you.
Next speaker is Dr. Richard Price from Australia Indonesia Center.
Selamat siang kawan-kawan, teman-teman. Apa kabar? Hungry? Saya punya 5 cucu. I have 5 grandchildren. They ask me all the time, what do you do? They think I'm a pirate. But when I answer them, I generally say I meet very important people and I just hope that they are doing important things that will make their life better. And I hope that the discussions over the next 2 days will contribute to my grandchildren continuing to think I'm a pirate and having a good time. Okay, a little bit about the Australia-Indonesia Centre. We were established last year in fact it was one of the very first decisions by the Prime Minister of Australia, Tony Abbott, in September of last year, and endorsed by the then President of Indonesia, SBY. If I had slides, which I've chosen not to do because it will take too long, there would be many logos up on the screen. My job is essentially, as a Director of Research, to do nothing more than get different cultures to collaborate, and not just Australian Indonesia cultures, but the culture of business, dealing with the culture of bureaucracy, dealing with the culture of politics, which is separate to bureaucracy, dealing with the culture of academia, and the culture of civil society. Easy. Not. Okay, so the goals of the Australia-Indonesia Centre, we have 3 of them. The first is about attitudes, and I'll relate attitudes to energy very shortly. But why is it that Australia and Indonesia, we're friends, then we're not friends? We're welcome, then we're not welcome. We're in, we're out, we're there, we're somewhere else. Trying to get on top of that is critically important. And so even when we are investing in energy, we are thinking about how we can improve relationships from an awareness, an attitude point of view. Our second goal is to deal with engagement. Engagement, government to government, business to business, civil society to civil society, and academia to academia. But from my perspective, does that lead to solutions? Absolutely not. The best engagement is going to be the triple P type engagement, the engagement between business, between civil society, between government, and between those that generate knowledge. And those that generate knowledge are not just within academic institutions. So the third of the goals, where 75% of our funding goes, is in research. And I should say that this forum that we're at today is our very first research investment. And I can't think of a better one, David, so congratulations for putting in a successful proposal. But the forum has a very consistent goal with a wider goal that the centre has, which is about shared solutions to shared problems. So when we invest, we always invest in combinations of disciplines and combinations of institutions. Our small projects always have a minimum of 1 Indonesian institution and 1 Australian. Our larger projects have a minimum of 2 and 2. Our mega projects will have a minimum of far beyond that. The research model that we have, we invest in 4 areas. health, food and agriculture, infrastructure and energy. But I can take any one of those 4 areas and use it as a window into the other 3. So as a research investor, I see and hear a lot of knowledge that has been talked about already, the creation of technologies that are going to change your world, but I wonder about whether or not they're actually going to make society a better society or not. I think that is going to come from looking beyond just energy. And so I can use energy to look at health, food and agriculture and infrastructure. And I believe that if I don't, then the outcomes that we get from energy policy aren't going to go anywhere. So within our energy cluster, and we've got representatives that are doing the planning at the moment, we have 3 objectives for our energy research investments. The first objective is to provide evidence-based solutions to decarbonising the Indonesian and Australian economies. Okay, this is bilateral. Second, to provide evidence-based solutions to ensuring equitable access to sustainable energy. And then the third of the objectives is to strengthen infrastructure, institutional and human capacity to support the implementation of sustainable energy policies. The first 2 are easy. You can just get a bunch of engineers together. The third is the most difficult. We have different forms of investment. I'll make sure that my presentation is made available to you because I'm not going to use the slide and I do want to move on quickly. We were, as speakers, given a few challenges, a few questions which I think were going to come up in the Q&A session but probably won't now. The first was, well, what are our suggestions as research investors for decarbonisation? And many of those alternatives have already been discussed, so I'm not going to go through them. But if there was one thing that I personally think that we need to think about to make everything else happen, is to increase the demand for decarbonised economies through enhancing energy literacy. Okay, the common person does not speak the language of energy, and nor do we speak the common language to those people. I've been into government agencies that deal with energy policy, and the illiteracy about energy policy and its links to society are pathetic. Okay, so if there's one thing we can do, we can enhance the policy literacy and energy literacy at all levels of society, starting with the political level. Secondly, I think we can also learn. One of the best ways of learning is by working with third parties. So yes, Australia and Indonesia can help one another with its energy outcomes, but why aren't we working together to help others? And I suspect there's some opportunities there. We can talk about energy grids, micro, macro. We can talk about South-South cooperation, North-South cooperation. Lots of opportunities, no time to discuss them now. So I'll move on to just my final points, which were questions 3 and 4 of the challenges put to us about the transition challenges for financing the changes that are required, and then the required responses needed to do that. And the first, I guess, is the role of government to reduce investment risk, and especially price risk. And we're moving into an environment, potentially a deregulatory environment, where the alternatives for energy sourcing are only going to increase the risks that will need to be addressed in terms of longer term investment. Ensuring that investors can get a return on their investment, absolutely vitally important. I could go through a number of policies. You've heard some of them already, so I'll deal with this in a slightly different way. Having been in the political end of policy development in Australia, I'm always sceptical about how policy is formed and then how it's communicated and then how it is implemented. And there are 4 principles that I'm always looking for, and I hope you think about some of these. Policy certainty. Investors are looking for policy certainty. The community is looking for policy certainty. They're looking for consistency, not mixed messages. They're looking for transparency. And if I had to think about some of the barriers to sustainable energy forms in countries like Indonesia, but also in Australia, a lot of it's tied in back rooms with vested interests. So policy transparency is critically important. And then the final point that I would make is policy synchronisation across jurisdictions, but also across policy domains. And I go back to the point that I made earlier. I don't see energy policy as being the domain of energy policy analysts and authors of policy, but rather a much wider domain of interests. Terima kasih.
Next is Pak Buncoro, Pak Budi.
Thank you. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, trust me, I don't want to be the last person standing here between you and your lunch. So I try to make my presentation quick. Anyway, all the presentation materials I think is distributed by the committee to you, or if not, they are available on the tables outside there. And also if you need the printed materials, brochure, pamphlet about the MC Indonesia is also available there. And I encourage all of you also to visit our website, www.mca-indonesia.co.id. So all the information are available there. So what is the MC Indonesia? So MC Indonesia stands for Millennium Challenge Account Indonesia. So about 3 years ago, can you get this first slide? US government and Indonesia government signed a compact agreement. This is a grant agreement about $600 million. So to support the Indonesia, basically addressing 2 challenges or 2 issues. The first is improving the productivity at the local economic level. And secondly is reducing the reliance on the fossil fuels, and at the same time also contribute toward the lower emission reduction. Next. So more than half of the compact, more than $300 million is contributed or allocated for the program called Green Prosperity. Green Prosperity, by its name, is to support basically again the economic development at the local level, at the local scale, but at the same time also to support the economic environmental or environmental stewardship of the investment made it. Green Prosperity has 4 components. The first one is what we call it the participatory land use. So as you know that in Indonesia the spatial certainty is important thing. Is you heard from the minister himself that dealing with the forestry, for example, this kind of things is not an easy things. So we dedicate some budget or some activity, some sub-program into this area. The second one is what we call it the green knowledge. So the green knowledge is also important. Just to give you a bit illustration on this. So Indonesia have more than 500 palm oils, and then each palm oil potentially can produce 1 to 2 megawatt from the methane gas, from the liquid waste. So they have all the money, and then bank also lendings, but this is the importance of knowledge. This is important of building the awareness that maybe they don't aware. Maybe the businessmen, the palm oil sectors, maybe they don't want it. They don't aware that something they can convert the waste into something more useful. The third one is the green prosperity facility. So this is basically we call grant facility itself. So 80% of the green prosperity program is allocated to be designated for 3 different windows. I talk about that later. And then the last one is the technical assistance and oversight. So the last one is basically to help the project. So as we see that the renewable energy, especially at the small scale, the bank is not lending. Bank complain that the project developers are not professional, they're not competent in the sector. So by providing the grant into the technical assistance and project operations side, we hope that we will get a good renewable energy project, then to boost the confidence of not only the project developers but also the financial sectors. So almost half of the green prosperity facility we will dedicate it for the renewable energy. So $150 million we will dedicate it for the renewable energy or support the renewable energy sectors. So we divide it into 2 different windows on this. We will launching this very soon, hopefully end of this month, and the other one is next month in December. So the first one is to support the community-based renewable energy. So this one is basically building, develop, construct a small-scale renewable energy for community that doesn't have the access to the PLN grid or the on-grid. So this one is more on the off-grid. So using the hydro, the small hydro as the basis, or also the other biomass and also the PV as the source of the renewable energy. The other one is the commercial sectors. So in Indonesia, this is famous, what we call it the PLTMH, or the Pusat Listrik, Pembangkit Listrik Tenaga Mikrohidro, or the hydro, the small hydro, basically the less than 10 megawatt hydro. So MCA or the Grant Prosperity, probably the only grant available for the private sectors in these commercial sectors. So we talked with the banks, we just discussed with the project developers. The idea of providing grant to the private sectors is basically to boost again the confidence of the private sectors and to boost the confidence of the banking, because the banking is not lending now. So Ibu Felia Salim already talked about this. BNI, they did a few hydro projects. They get stuck, they get stalled, they stop now. We talk with the Bank Mandiri, same thing happened. We talk with other banks, same thing also happened. So thank you to Ambassador Blake, who's with the strong support, can allow us to provide a grant for this. So again, probably we the only boys in town who provided grant in the commercial sectors. This is not going to happen forever. So the grant, the facility also happened only until 2018, so a bit more than 3 years from now. And we do our best to use this as the catalyst. So the project developer can help them basically to get the good project, prepare a good project, and also to again help the banking sector, the financial sectors, to absorb some of the risk. Because as you probably know that 80% maybe, or even probably more, of the hydropower project in Indonesia is cost overrun. So this is something partly because of the not a proper preparation in terms of the project, but secondly also you're dealing with the environment, you're dealing with the natural. Sometimes you cannot predict the natural. Sometimes the the hydrology study and the climate and those kinds of things is not easy to predict. So I think I'd rather stop there. I'll be more than happy to answer the questions. So again, all the presentation materials, all the information about MC Indonesia, Green Prosperity, and the grant facility of this is available So again, I encourage you to visit our website because we do open the call now for the proposals, for the expression of interest, and one of them will be closed very soon in 19th of December, while the renewable energy one will be closed until November 16th. February 16th. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you. For this session is very interesting because we are talking about money. Well, money wise is of course that very very important for discussion. If anyone to have one or two, because I know that everybody is hungry. Hungry is almost 1 o'clock. They're already 1 o'clock. Anyone who have one or two questions very fast? Pak Gatot, that's only one very short question. Pak.
Especially to convert waste to energy. How many in Indonesia actually can get the CDM process? And how the potential future we do this for energy sustainability?
Actually, if we talk about the CDM project, we still have many opportunity and possibility in Indonesia. That one of a pillar actually we are still developing currently in the early development is about energy efficiency. So we think that there are still many future change that we can develop more on the CDM project. One thing that we also will be encouraged more on the development of the CDM is about the raising tariff of the fuel and electricity, and this is we understand that will be more encouraged for